Alright, so we got everything unclamped and we're ready to start cleaning up the outline of our board. It may be tempting right now to cut this excess keel off, but for now we're going to leave this because it gives us a nice place to clamp to if we need to as we start adding rails. So you can kind of see here where the bottom and top planks hang past that plywood rail band just a little bit. We're going to take a block plane or a spoke shave, and eventually we might switch over to a piece of hard block of wood with some 80 grit sandpaper, and we're going to try to blend this in and get it pretty close to that plywood rail band. Okay, so up here in the nose, this is a little bit harder work because we're working with grains that are going in a bunch of different directions. But to start off, we'll cut these tabs off right here, even with the keel. This is going to be the end of the board that the rail bands go around. So we'll just take a Japanese, and again, always kind of err on the proud side. We can always take off more later. Okay, so first thing to keep in mind is where we marked our rail band here. Remember, that's kind of a low spot or a flat spot. So as we're taking down our planks, we want to make sure that we try to fair that out and keep the planks a little bit proud in that area. The other thing is, we generally work from the middle of the board out towards the nose and the tail. So if we take our edge tool, even though this is plywood and there's grain going in different directions, the outside surfaces are running along basically parallel with the center line of the board. So we always want to work our way towards the tail, towards the nose from the middle of the board. That way we're kind of going down the grain. So starting in the middle, and I like to keep my plane kind of spanning both planks. It helps to make sure that you're taking things down evenly. Okay, I just finished cleaning up the outline of our board. Went around the board with a block plane and took off as much plywood as I could, but as I got closer, I switched over to a block of wood with some 80 grit sandpaper. And it's nice to have a block that is big enough to kind of span the rail, so you're taking down the top and bottom at the same time. And then also something that's got a little length to it, so it's going to span any irregularities in the outline. So I went around the whole board and sanded, cleaned up the outside, and I'll show you a couple things to keep an eye on. Up here in the nose, you notice I cut the keel off just flush because we want our rail bands to wrap right around the end of that nose. So I cut the keel off so it was out of the way, that way I could sand my way right around the nose without hitting anything. So that's nice and clean and brought in all the way to the tip of the keel. And same thing at the tail. Okay, right here you can kind of see what we're looking for is a nice flat surface, basically where the rail strips, the rail bands can be in contact with the whole surface. So if you hold a piece of wood on there, it's going to be glued from the top to the bottom. If anything, you can see there's a little lip here, just about a fingernail thickness, and that's great. The cork will bend in and the glue is thick enough that it'll fill in that tiny void. But it's always better to kind of leave that a little bit proud to make sure that if anything, our rail is glued to our planks. We wouldn't want to go to a point where the planks were inside of the rail bands, because then you would show a little gap right along that top or bottom edge. Back here in the tail on this mini Simmons, I just took a little extra time to kind of soften the corner at the tail. This is just a couple swipes with your 80 grit, and this will help that cork rail band to bend around there. If that was a hard turn, the cork might tend to crack right at that corner. So just a little bit of sanding and that'll bend right around there nicely. All right, two last things. So on the outline, the last thing really is to kind of run your eye down the outline of the board and make sure there's nothing that's out of whack. We want that to be as fair of a curve as we can. If there is something that's a little wobble, just take your hard block of wood and your 80 grit and try to sand it out. And remember, don't chase everything. If it's small and you feel like you're making it worse, you know, kind of call it good. And then the last thing is, I left my keel top and bottom. I left this in place. We're going to eventually cut this off, but I think for now this is nice to have. If we need to put a clamp from here to the rail for something, that can be useful. And we'll remove it after the rails go on.